the history of Boreas, who was the librarian to Queen Christina, who was the daughter of the great general that won the 30 Years' War for Sweden, but then died, Gustavus Adolphus. And she took over as an 18-year-old, and she brought an end to the 30 Years' War. But she was herself very interested in comparative religion, spirituality and mysticism. She had Boreas as her mentor and advisor, and he was studying the runes and how they're connected to the Kabbalah and the Jewish and Hebrew languages. And like me, he speculated they must go back to a common root. She also employed Descartes, the French philosopher from not far from here, to go and be her tutor in philosophy in Stockholm. And then she did something unexpected. She abdicated the throne. She decided she was more interested in wisdom than power, gave the throne to her brother, and went to live in Rome and became a Catholic. I mean, she'd always been a universal thinker, like me, so, you know, and she just wanted to go and hang out in Rome and meet these intellectuals, and she was friendly with the Pope and lots of the Jesuits and these great thinkers who were trying to understand universal truth at the time. And she had a lovely life in Rome. Great woman, Christina. So I've been studying that. Also, I've come across an interesting philosopher, another Catholic, called Justus Lipsius, 1547 to 1606 this week, who was a neo-Stoic. He was from what we now call Belgium, and he was highly trained as an academic. He was partly at the University of Jena in Germany, where later Fichte taught, also Leiden, Louvain, and the building in Brussels where the European Council meets is called the Justus Lipsius building. I was researching that, so I looked up and thought, well, who's Justus Lipsius? And to my shame, I'd never heard of him. But he turns out to be an amazing intellectual who combined the Stoic philosophy of ancient pagan thought, going back to Seneca and the early Stoics, with a broad-minded kind of Christianity. And he wasn't too fussed. I mean, he went and taught in Protestant countries like Holland, fine with that, because he could see the wisdom of that. But he remained a Roman Catholic at heart and a humanist. So I think it's good to have the building of the European Council named after this great philosopher. It shows why philosophy matters. And then there's another philosopher I've discovered this week, which I thought was interesting, an Italian intellectual called Jacopo Aconcio, 1520 to 1566, so around about the same time as Lipsius. He was brought up a Catholic, went to university, studied to a high level, became very proficient. Now, he wrote an interesting book called Sur la méthode, on method, on the right investigation of things in the scientific way. It was in Latin. I wonder if Descartes knew this book and that it inspired Descartes' title and work. I'd love to, I don't know if anyone's ever studied the link between Jacopo Aconcio and Descartes. I suspect there is one. Anyway, so then he went up to Switzerland. He was lecturing. He'd studied the Bible in enormous detail. He knew many languages. And he became, he could see the point of the Protestants. He could see, the church, there is corruption, there's dogmatism. So he was seduced by some of the Swiss reformers into thinking, well, maybe they're right. Maybe we do need a reformed church. And he met in Strasbourg, where he taught, some English reformers who'd taken shelter there from the persecutions of Queen Mary in England, who was stupidly burning Protestants, quite a lot of them, because she was very much inspired by the Spanish monarch of the day who married her and sent an armada, and it was all a bit out of kilter. And she was badly advised, so she took up the idea of burning people as heretics just because they're Protestant. But then Elizabeth took over the throne, and Elizabeth said, no, enough with the burning. We're going to have like a moderate kind of Christianity. I don't care, you can be Catholic or Protestant, but you can be a Catholic Protestant. In other words, you can be an Anglican. And the only thing you can't do is plot like treason. You know, you can't like try and assassinate the monarch or blow up Parliament or anything. You can be quiet about your religious beliefs. Just practice. God will be happy with you. Just stay quiet and peaceful. Anyway, these exiles from Strasbourg went back to England when Elizabeth took over, and Jacopo Aconcio went with them. And he had picked up some useful skills as a military engineer as well as an academic. And so the English Prime Minister, Sir William Cecil, I think it was, paid for him to come and help with fortifications and stuff. And he wrote a very interesting book called The Stratagems of Satan, which is a very interesting title. And what is that about? So the Stratagems of Satan, according to Jacopo Aconcio, which he dedicated to Queen Elizabeth I, are the dogmatisms of the church. It's Satan, according to him, who makes these Christians so fanatical against each other. The only people that benefit from that are the forces of darkness. And this is what the stratagems of Satan are. And he said to Queen Elizabeth, thank you for giving me shelter. She awarded him a pension for life. And he was freely able to teach and write and work and think, as I have been in my life in Britain. So he's another interesting guy. Yeah, okay, questions?
Excuse me, that's just for the word Satan, I do not understand.
Satan, le diable.
Ah.
Les stratégies du diable.
Ah, okay.
Satan. Oui.
Ah, okay. Ah, Satan.
Satan.
Thank
really.
you.
Yes. And so I think if old Lipsius and Aconcio get together in the heaven worlds and send some common sense down to us humans, we can. I think they would support my proposal for the three religions solution. You see, because it's only the stratagem of Satan that would say, oh, you can't do that because they're all diametrically opposed and they hate each other. No, that's the wrong way of thinking. Actually, they're, like the Buddhists say, they're dewdrops on Indra's net, reflecting each other. And the wisdom that you find in Judaism and Islam and Christianity, they're all interconnected. In the Huayan school of Buddhism, everything is interconnected. Every thought you can possibly think or feeling, it's all done before, it's all reflected endlessly. And so that's the way to peace, through enlightenment. Okay, so there we are, that's what I've been up to this week. And it's been busy, but, you know, we're getting there. Last thing to say, looking up the words for liberal in Anglo-Saxon, I had fun with this. So the core word is rum. Rum, R-U-M. Rumgier is a liberal giver, means you're generous, you give lots of stuff. Rumgifol means it's an adjective saying you're a liberal person because there's lots of room in you for other people. Rumgifulness is a liberal attitude. And what I think, okay, in Buddhism we talk about spaciousness of mind. The difference between someone who's fanatical and fighting over space is they don't realize space is infinite. All these wars about boundaries and, you know, you've got that bit, I've got this bit, so let's fight, like the French-German wars in the trenches. This was because they'd forgotten it's an infinite, spacious universe we inhabit. There's plenty of room for all of us. And rumhyot is to be liberal in heart, which means to be cheerful. Rumlich is gracious, liberal in attitude. So this is interesting. The Anglo-Saxon etymology shows us they knew what it is to have a spacious mind. And that's the deep meaning. I don't know if Macron realises this. Maybe we'll rename Aldi, we'll call it Rumhjort. The plenty of room for everybody in this Europe that we're trying to build and in this world we're trying to build. You know, but for that we have to appreciate and honour each other and each other's perspectives. Okay, that's my little summary of where we're at here. Let's have a look at the periodic table. Any questions before I go on? Any? Okay, well, if they come up, as we proceed, let's look at the periodic table. You choose one first. One we haven't done before, maybe.
Sorry to take so long
No,
time.
no problem. No, go for it. Choose wisely.
Well, philosophy, postmodernism. Did we take it?
I don't think we've done that one.
No.
No, that's a good one.
No, because it was very interesting. Really, your introduction is more than an introduction. So many topics and so many new ideas. And I was thinking, because you spoke about religion, the three religion interface treaty,
Yeah,
which I read on the internet.
Okay.
It's very interesting.
right.
It's quite a long treaty.
Of course, yeah.
But I was thinking, I don't know about Palestinian people, but I guess in Israeli people, maybe 80% do not have religious practice. So that's why I'm really concerned in our modern world that religion is deep inside us, but not. It becomes. I think nowadays it's like our shadows, as Jung would say, and that's why I ask you the question about the philosophical postmodernism,
Okay.
because I'm very concerned about. I'm sure nowadays you ask people, are you spiritual? They will say yes. Do you practice a religion? They will say no. So I wonder where to place them in. Maybe if you have one box for them, I would be very happy.
Okay, yeah, no, good point. I think they occur in many of the different boxes. But yeah, we'll look at postmodernism. That's very interesting choice. Let's look at for the second choice. Let's look at transpersonal esoteric thought, which is number 126, which may be certainly one of the boxes in which you'd find the spiritual but not religious people. So we'll do those two. So let's look at postmodernism first, which is what number was it again? Remind me.
142.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, 142. Okay, fine. Now, let me try and locate it, because this is all on the internet, but I don't have the internet in this room at the moment. So I have, fortunately, the text, which is what is on the internet. If people are interested, they can look at this. So this 142 breaks down. It's got several things: phenomenology, hermeneutics, structuralism, and postmodernism. It's all together. Some of the great thinkers involved include Husserl, founder of phenomenology, and Heidegger, and also Lyotard, a French intellectual. And I think postmodernism is particularly associated with Lyotard. He was asked by the Canadian government in Quebec to do a survey of all knowledge for educational purposes. He was supposed to see what is modernism, where should we put investment in as Quebec. And he wrote a famous report, I think it's called A Report on the Condition of Knowledge, in which he said there's too much knowledge. We cannot know its limits, or we're we've now reached the point of the singularity, where the only thing we can know is that we know nothing. And so he said it's no longer possible to be an omniscient polymath like it was in the medieval period, when someone like Thomas Aquinas or Alain de Lille could master all that was known, or in the Islamic world, people like Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd or Aristotle in the ancient world. Lyotard said that's not possible anymore because there's just too much knowledge. You cannot master all every box in enormous detail. So therefore we're into a new predicament, which he called the postmodern condition, because the hubris of modernism was that we could master everything and we can know everything, and therefore we can engineer society according to reason, and we can all be happy and satisfied as citizens. Lyotard said that's not possible anymore because the problem is that we're all hyper specialists. To know anything, to be a really great physicist now, is itself a vast project, because you have to master all the schools and theories of physics. And the way education is structured with PhDs, it focuses you down to narrow your thought. So you don't even know all of physics, you know some little bit. Lasers, or gravity waves, or relativity theory. Each of those is a lifetime study. And it's the same in all the other fields of knowledge. Even in the humanities, we now know so much about geography and the complexities of geography, or religious studies, or history. You can't master it all, so you have to specialise. So that was Lyotard's point. We've reached a new phase of humanity, which he called the postmodern condition. So we have to learn to live with uncertainty and not knowing. That's his sort of starting point. Then Derrida gets a look into this box, because he's another French intellectual who starts from this point. And he says the job of philosophy is to deconstruct people's attempts to know everything. He sees the job of the philosopher as a negative critic of the all-knowing polymath. And he says they're making grammatical mistakes in claiming this super knowledge. They're doing Freudian egotism, they're doing all kinds of things, which he, the great Derrida, is going to deconstruct and put them down, to a human level. The philosophy itself is no longer possible, said Derrida. All we can do is deconstruct it. And other thinkers, have argued the same. Other people I put in this category include Foucault, another great French thinker, who said that yes, that's all true, and the problem is we're limited by our psychological tendencies, which are all conditioned from the past. We didn't invent the human condition, we inherited it from our parents and our culture and our friends and our families, and we're the victims of it. So all we can do is sort of look back, a bit like Plato said in the cave, try and see who's pointing the light, to understand what all these shadows are. He particularly thought sexuality is a key, which I think, obviously it is a key. And there are other people that would come into this category. I go back and say, who are the founders of this? I actually say Buddha counts as a founder of phenomenology, because he says, I'm not going to affirm the absolute, I'm not going to explain it to you. I can't in normal language, but I can give you the tools where you can experience it. So his response, if Buddha and Lyotard were talking, they kind of agree that it's not possible to master all known knowledge, but Buddha would say it is possible to go to the source of all knowledge. The enlightened mind, which Lyotard doesn't discuss, is the source of the potential of human omniscience, because if you think about it, all the contents of all the boxes were created by human intelligence. All the great scientists, physicists, philosophers, prophets, seers, artists. And so it all comes from buddhi, which is the Sanskrit word for cosmic intellect. And that's what Buddha was saying, is that's in all of us. you can contact the source of buddhi in yourself by turning around at the seat of consciousness to focus on the mind. So I count him as a founder of this method of phenomenology, because Husserl was saying the same thing. The job of philosophy, unlike Derrida, wasn't to deconstruct, it's to transform consciousness to look at itself, to introspect, and then it will find the wisdom within itself. I also put Nagarjuna in because he complemented that idea. And I put Hegel in because I think what Hegel was trying to do, he called it objective idealism. He was asking, what is the pure spirit which informs all possible modalities of knowing? The Geist, what is that? And he tried to explain that in his book, The Phenomenology of Spirit, which he wrote in Jaina, and in his subsequent writings, and about logic and so on. So he was inhabiting this terrain in his own right, I think, as was Heidegger, who in his own way is a German philosopher in the 20s and 30s and so on, was trying to research all this stuff. So I think it's fascinating. It's a great the question of being spiritual and not religious. I think all these people were. I mean, there's a third thing, which is being intellectual, which is thinking about religion, thinking about spirituality. It's a philosophical tradition. I don't agree with Derrida that deconstruction is all that we can do as philosophers. I'm obviously someone that believes it's still possible to work out a map of things, and that's why I produced the periodic table of the religions and philosophies. You see, in Derrida's day, he didn't have access to this. Nobody thought of it. Was he sitting here at the table and we were having the conversation, he might say, yeah, that's good, you've done a good job there. But we still need to deconstruct them all. I would agree. Let us deconstruct. Go to the roots of them all. But then I believe we will find this common thread, which is, if you want, the cosmic mind, buddhi, at work, which is the common intelligence that we all share, I believe. Can I prove it? I can say intellectually one has had the taste of that. And I can affirm that other thinkers and intellectuals have had that taste. And so I think I can't prove it to somebody that hasn't had that taste. Like Buddha said, you have to do the work to download the goodies, So that's and as for my dear friend Lyotard, I mean, I was born in Quebec, so I think I'm the living witness to the falsity of his position, that the postmodern condition, there's a postmodern condition, which we have to get to next, which is when we accept, in humility, that there is a divine intelligence, which is bigger than us. We all benefit, derive insights from. We don't understand it. It's amazing. I think we can love it. And that's why when I was in Scotland at the Castle of the Muses, I set up the Centre for the Study of Divine Intelligence. As a philosopher, I'm just saying, let's study this as a hypothesis. I don't know why Lyotard didn't think of that. He was, he's of an earlier generation, I think. And I think now we have to ask those questions. I mean, as far as I know, he never looked at Middle Eastern thought. He knew nothing about Islam, for instance. He never studied the Kabbalah. He never studied the esoteric traditions. He was a scientist, and that reached its limits, according to him. I think if you go into the deeper esoteric schools of thought, a way opens up for the reopening of discourse about the human condition and what we should be doing, which I think is loving and showing social solidarity and ending the wars on the planet, through peace work. So there's plenty to be getting on with, and to my friends in Quebec, I'd say, you know, get this on your school walls. Let's translate it into French, and get it in every school and college. Okay, ça va encore?
Yes, a question.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much for your explanation on this topic. You spoke about the study of things.
Yes.
I would ask you, maybe time is becoming short, but just one or two ideas you may have about practice. Because studying with no practice is a kind of mess, and in religion, what is good is we have both. We have the study and we have the practice. Would you see the postmodernism if you were asked? Well, okay, I have a plan of study, but would you suggest a plan of practice?
It's a great question. I love it. So that's the field we call ethics in philosophy. The what to do, the how, the why, the action. And of course, it's a very, very important branch of philosophy, practice. And in all these boxes, there are ethical routes, avenues. And in fact, on the website, in the periodic table, I list the virtues, which is Aristotle's way of talking about ethics, is to say what are the virtues you're going for, because that's good action, good practice. You know, the virtue of a pianist is to play really well, that sonata or whatever. That's a good pianist. A good farmer will be growing beautiful crops and wonderful things. So ethics is excellence in practice, according to Aristotle. And the highest form of excellence in practice is to practice the virtues. This is his definition of ethics. And the virtues are specific to the field of action you're working in. So the virtue of a footballer is to, play the ball really well and score lots of goals, or defend it, and so on. The virtue of a philosopher is to understand as much of the intricacies of philosophy as you possibly can. The virtue of a politician is to attain power, but for the betterment and happiness of the people, said Aristotle. It's for the social welfare of society as a whole. It's the point of politics. So anyway, the good news is, in the periodic table, I've listed the virtues for each of the boxes. I've gone through and I've listed what are their key virtues. So, for instance, structuralism and postmodernism, the virtues are accuracy, get your facts right, keenness of insight, so don't sort of like make everything a mystical blur, actually get the details, go into it, keenness of insight, intellectual depth. So, people like Derrida, they're really deep thinkers. The simultaneity of coexisting meanings. This is a virtue practiced by the postmodernist school, which is brilliant, that there isn't one final answer to things. There are simultaneously coexisting parallel answers, which may not be able to be reduced to each other. We may just have to accept that those guys over there have one truth, these guys over here have another truth.
I like this one very much.
Yeah, the simultaneity of coexisting meanings. I don't know what that is in French. And then an evolution of that, I call it the paradoxical interconnectedness. So this is where it gets interesting, because if you introduce concepts like telepathy and stuff, then those guys who were doing their Mahayana Buddhist monastery in 6th century China, plumbing the depths of interdependence, you can contrast that with these Sufis in Iran who are saying the same thing and experiencing the same miracle of the interconnectedness of everything. So it's paradoxically, although they don't look connected, they are actually. And that's interesting. And I think that's the way to escape from the no exit of Sartre's kind of like, there's no way out of this, No, there is. It's through, and the last virtue is magic. Because because at this level of intellectual profundity, magic arises in the intellecting, which is when you can connect all these things up and see they're simultaneously co-arising. That's when you start doing magic. And if you think about magic, if you read Fraser, magic is about working with that energy. So I create a little thing, a ritual, a spell, which has an impact on that event over there in the mega world, because it's like a mirror microcosm of the thing I'm trying to impact. That's the law of magic. And there are people now, advanced white magicians on the planet, who are realizing that and able to work with that. A little story about that. So I met a guy who worked in Britain for computing repair stuff, very, very high level, with the Ministry of Defence and top. He was £1,000 a day kind of guy. If your computer system crashes, he would be the guy you send for. He told me a story that he was once sent by the Ministry of Defence to this mega computer that had crashed. He tried everything to fix it, couldn't fix it, did everything logically. He finally got out a crystal pendulum type thing and hovered it over the machine, and it fixed it. He couldn't explain it, but that's magic. So anyway, that's that. Those are the virtues of that one. Now, what was the other one I was going to do?
That was esoteric transpersonal,
Yes,
126.
126, okay.
We have maybe 8 minutes.
Yeah, in a nutshell. So this is what I find this fascinating. The transpersonal concepts arose with Jung's work, Überpersönlich in German. It means those forces and energies which are beyond the individual ego or mind. Jung studied this idea of the collective consciousness. And then Roberto Assagioli studied it. He was an Italian who dreamed up the idea of psychosynthesis. So instead of psychoanalysis, where you break everything down into the bits of the soul, he said, let's put it all back together again, call it synthesis. So he was a transpersonal thinker. Abraham Maslow in America was a great transpersonal thinker as well, who said the important thing in life is what your values are and what your sense of purpose and meaning is. We should be studying that as psychologists, not how schizophrenic you are and looking at all the pathologies. That's really important. We have to heal them. But in order to do that, we have to have a knowledge of human wellness. What is it to be well? It's like medicine.
Good question.
Unless it has a concept of health, it can't really cure people. And so Maslow said rightly that we've looked too much at ill people for our understanding of the psyche. That's ridiculous. To understand the psyche, we should look at well people, healthy people, and even people that are like able to achieve supreme like stuff, really gifted people, geniuses and so on. And that would give us somewhere to go with health. So Maslow started all that. Stan Grof did the same. He said he worked at Esalen in California, and he said some of the wellness things can be replicated by using psychedelics. If you want to heal people, if you use sacred plant medicines, psychedelics, it sends you on a kind of catastrophic soul journey from which you emerge a whole person at a higher level. So it breaks down your ego so that your soul can emerge. Ken Wilber's taken these ideas on further, great transpersonal philosopher and thinker, and he's quite broken through into the popular consciousness certainly in the English-speaking world by looking at the phases of human evolution. So his idea is that superconsciousness and enlightenment shouldn't be the prerogative of just the few elites, but gradually that knowledge should get out there in en masse. But there's